Okay, well, welcome to our feature presentation. Tonight at AVID Investors, we have Energize Me, starring Chris Callor. He is an energy auditor and a home inspector with professional inspection services. You'll find his website out there. And today he is going to basically give us free money and free services. Chris Callor. I'll give you, you've got 15, 20, whatever you want.
15, 20, okay.
You can go longer if you want.
Hi, my name is Chris Callor. I'm going to skip the intro.
You can take as long as you need. I usually tell people 15 because it takes them a half hour to do 15. So you've got time.
Hi, my name is Chris Callor. I went to Michigan State University, graduated construction management, built homes across the US for 12 years. Decided that building homes in the way we do is not logical, doesn't make sense. I wanted to do things differently. Intended on starting a construction company to build super efficient homes, and then realized there's a much bigger market in existing homes and making them more efficient and comfortable and healthy. So we're going to begin with that. Goals today: learn about thermodynamics and science. We're going to teach you about the misconceptions most homeowners have and the facts that are behind those. Common problems in the Treasure Valley homes, solutions to these common problems, why you should get an energy audit and who should do it, and free light bulbs from Idaho Power. Thanks, Stacy. I didn't bring any light bulbs today, sorry. So I am a contractor for Idaho Power. They run an energy audit program. I'm not here to sell you anything that you don't want. If I do an energy audit, I don't sell any services or improvements. So I'm an unbiased expert in the field. So for thermodynamics, how does heat transfer? Why is it important? So convection is a good example is a hair dryer. If you turn on a hair dryer without a fan, you won't feel it from very far away. As soon as the fan turns on, you're blowing air across a heater or a cooler, and you're convecting energy. So you can move energy quickly through convection. There's conduction. So if you grab, it's a molecular vibration through solid. If you grab a frying pan that's been on the stove for a while and it's made out of cast iron, you're going to burn your hand. The heat is transferred through the metal. When you touch it, you're conducting that heat. And then radiation is a wave of energy through space. So it can be a vacuum, it can have materials. But we're not vibrating the molecules, it's a radiant wave of energy. So a good example is the sunshine. It travels through a vacuum of space, hits us here, and we feel the heat going like, wow, this is radiant energy. Also happens, so at the line of sight, if I put the sun in this room and you go behind the wall, you won't feel it radiating on you, it'll radiate through the wall. So an example of that would be an attic. If you have the sun shining on your shingles get really hot, your attic gets hot, your home gets hot. There are ways to battle radiation with foil. So an experiment I did was hold your hand over a burner on a stove, gas burner. You'll quickly burn your hand. Put a sheet of foil there, hold your hand over that burner, you can hold it there forever. So just the radiant foil or radiant energy bounces off of foil surfaces. Energy travels from high pressure to low pressure. So if you think if I blew up a balloon, and I pop it, the high pressure is expanding into the room, not the vacuum going to the balloon. Humidity travels from high to low. So if I put a paper towel on a water spill, the water's not getting drier, the dryer is getting wetter. Does this make sense? Sure. And energy travels from hot to cold. So that becomes important when we're talking about homes, because in the wintertime, we're heating our house and we're losing that heat through the wall to the cold. In the summertime, the heat is coming into our house. And if you think of heat being more active, obviously something that's more active is going to run in circles around something that's slow and cold. So all these factor into your human comfort. So if this room was 80 degrees and 100% humid, we'd all be sweating because it's high humidity. If we are in a 80-degree room, but we have a concrete floor that's 50 degrees, 80 degrees isn't hot, and it could even be humid and will still be cold because there's a cold surface our body heat is radiating towards the cold. Air temperature is what we're most familiar with. So when we set our thermostats to 68, 72, 76, whatever it is, you are controlling the air temperature. Lastly would be air movement. So again, factor any of these in. A hot, humid day, turn on a fan, the air movement makes us feel more comfortable. So all these factors go into how we evaluate a home's efficiency and comfort. So how many people have windows in their home? Okay. How many people think that their windows are the biggest loss of energy in their home? No one?
Sounds like a trick question.
It does, because I'm trying to trick you guys. So nobody thinks that windows are the least efficient thing in their home. The truth is that they are. You're going to lose 50% of your heat through windows. So here's the trick question. What's the most important improvement you can make? Well, windows are the biggest loss. Windows are obviously the answer, but the answer is not windows. Windows are pretty much the last thing to even consider. So here we got an example of an old wood window, single pane. We're talking about our North End historic houses. You are kind of stuck with a wood window, single pane wood window. This is an aluminum sliding glass door with 2 panes of glass. And this is what the values look like. So I'm not going to get too deep into U values and R. Are you guys familiar with R value? Like if a wall has an R13, it's going to resist the flow of heat through R13. If it's a wall of R40, it's going to take 3 times as long for heat to get through a high R value. So that the summary of this is going to be the bottom numbers are the R value. If you have a really bad wood window and you put in the pretty much best money window for the value, like not a triple pane, but you will increase your R value by 2, right? Which is pretty much if you put a sheet of cardboard over that window, you're going to improve your R value by about 2. So replacing glass and frames and all that, yes, it will make the windows more efficient, but on a grand scheme of things, you replace every window in your house, you save $45 a year. Like, okay, I'm not getting the return on investment by doing windows. So you might replace or fix the wood window because it's a maintenance thing. It's always falling out. You get a lot of sound through them. You might replace aluminum because it'll freeze on the bottom in the wintertime. You'll get frost building up. And they tend to be a little more leaky. There are other alternatives. So a cellular blind, shown at Home Depot. If you close that blind, you can get up to an R5 on a window. So you're replacing a window to get R2, you're putting in a nice finished blind to get more than R2. I've never seen acrylics or indos in person, but this is a acrylic sheet that pretty much suctions into your window. It's weather stripped on all sides. They get good reviews for sound transfer, increasing the efficiency and comfort of your house. They can also put reflective films for keeping heat out or heat in. And the best window on the market can't beat the shade that a tree puts out or an awning puts out. So windows, the most of the improvements are to keep the heat out in the summer. So when you see a window savings, you're usually going to say my air conditioner bill dropped by this much money. If you put a tree, an awning or whatever, that same window is going to be far more efficient than replacing the window. So shade is your #1 cost-effective improvement. Let's see, who knows what a draft is? Who knows what an air leak is? Is there a difference? Yes, there is. My windows are drafty. Everyone's windows are drafty. A draft is a convection current of air. So if I go to a house, and most people, what's your #1 problem? Windows. Okay, great. What's the matter with them? They leak. When do they leak? They leak in winter. Okay, where are you? I'm right next to it when it's leaking. Okay, warm air. So we're going to thermodynamics. Warm air rises, cold air sinks. Warm air touches cold glass. That air gets cold and then it cascades down the window. So it's like a waterfall, but it's made out of air. So it's essentially just a loop within the closed system. It's a draft, but it's not an air leak. #2 most common concerns are doors. My doors are leaky. Yeah, they probably are. I think I have a chart on what's actually leakiest. There it is. So the most common air leaks are floors, walls, and ceilings. Duct work we'll get to later, but that's 15%. Pretty much every fireplace I see is an air leak, 300 to 400, 500 cubic feet per minute of leakage. Plumbing pipes, penetrations through floors, through the attic, whichever it is. Windows make up about 10% of your air leaks. So even if you replace all your windows, you're still going to have 10% of your air leaks at windows. Fans and vents, electrical outlets, a lot of people like that. I can feel cold air out of the electrical outlet. Okay, well, you could try to fix that problem, but you're really wasting a lot of time. So air infiltration is air leakage into the home. The number one source of air leakage into your house is your foundation vents, in my expert opinion. I go to homes with old timers there, they cover their vents and put foam blocks in. Their air leakage is 40% lower than the guy who doesn't do that. This is me closing the vent. That's me on the inside in a dark room with the vent closed, and you can see that it leaks. Thermodynamics says warm air rises. So if warm air escapes out of the attic, the highest point, it's going to pull cold air in behind it to replace it. So these are vents. They put them on all sides of the house, thinking that when the wind blows, the air will pass through and go out the other side of the vent. If we hold smoke sticks on vents, air is going in all the vents. So warm air rises, pulls cold air in, whether or not the wind blows. And these aren't like hard, fast, guaranteed facts, but pretty much that's the rules of thumb I go by. So common air infiltration areas. So now you have your vents are leaking, and you have floor vents where the HVAC contractor cut them. Cold air is going to come through the floor into your house. So now we've let the air not only under the house, but now it's inside our house. So the first thing we look at is there a gap between your metal duct and the wood floor? If so, try to do a better job than that. Sealing it. So you could caulk the edges. This is under construction. If you're replacing carpet or whatever, then obviously you can be as sloppy as you want. But sealing just the edge of the metal to the wood reduces leaks in your house at one of the most important parts of your house. So this top one shows a bathtub before drywall. If you can imagine that space under the tub is a hollow air pocket. And then this is below the bathtub where the drain connects. So that's about the size of a shoebox. That shoebox is under pressure. So warm air is trying to get up into the shower walls. It's pulling cold air in your foundation vents. It's getting under your bathtub. Why is my bathtub always cold? Because there's a big hole below it. This is a really well done job with styrofoam and spray foam and whatnot. When I do energy audits, my normal recommendation is grab a couple of kitchen garbage bags, stuff them with a towel or insulation, and just stuff the bags so that they expand and then fill the gaps. The difference between stuffing insulation in that hole and stuffing insulation in a bag in the hole is if you just put insulation, you're going to filter the air before it cools down your bathtub. So you'll have cleaner air behind the bathtub, but it'll still be cold. So put it in a bag. And that goes with pretty much any leak you find in a house. Like, oh, I have this 4-inch hole in my ceiling. Stuff some insulation in a bag, stuff it in the hole. This is where the fireplace used to be. Stuff the bag, stuff in the hole. We don't really have time, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we looked at what a bathtub looks like in the framing. And then this is a pocket door. So if the bathtub is on the same wall as this door, air comes in the drain, under the tub, and then through your pocket door into your house. Those are pretty substantial. Fixing it is a real challenge unless you don't really need the pocket door. So some homes are like, well, there's a door to the closet. That's the leaky one. Do you ever close the closet door? No, I don't. Take some 2-inch tape, tape up the side of the door, tape across the top of the door, solve your air leak for 5 cents. So we talked about infiltration air coming in, comes in low in the house, heat rises.
Sorry, Chris, is that because the pocket door is like a holy wall with no insulation in it that's exposed?
So these are wood slats and there's no drywall behind a tub. So this is basically, if you were under the tub, you would see the door as it opens and closes.
Oh, okay.
Right? So air comes through the tub into here and then it can travel. Also comes through top plates and such, but the real biggest leaks are when it's on a wall with a tub. So air exits high in the home at the ceiling. Infrared camera shows you the dark spots are air streaks, the orange are the hot parts. Simply caulking the drywall lid to the ceiling is a great way to stop your air leak there. You could also try foam weather strips, putting latches, things like that. Most people don't go in their attics very often. I'm a big fan of caulk it, leave it. Can lights on older homes, so 70s, 80s, some of the 90s, are significant leaks. Like every can light, and can lights are funny. So warm air rises, turn on a light bulbs create heat. You just create a little heater to pull more air through your ceiling. They used to spend $250, $300 trying to air seal each can light, building boxes, caulking it, foaming it, fire hazards, whatever. Nowadays, you can buy an LED replacement kit for like 12 bucks. You'll take the ring off of the fixture, take the light bulb out, and you see you screw in a new bulb. These little tabs just hold friction, and there's weather stripping. If I would do one on my house, I would caulk it to the ceiling instead of weather stripping. Bathroom fans are pretty common. So where the drywall, kind of like the vents in the floor, we have a metal vent cut through a floor, seal the vent to the floor. We also want to seal vents to drywall. High in the ceiling. So most of your leaks are going to be crawl space vents coming in, going upstairs, and finding things on the ceiling like your fan and your attic hatch and your can lights. That concludes the air infiltration and draftiness. Lighting, probably the most cost-effective improvement you can make is install LED light bulbs, period. 6 bulbs, LEDs use the same amount of power as 1 incandescent. So replace 6 fixtures, you can leave them on all day and still spend less than having incandescents. So that was lighting. Appliances, I don't really get into washers, dryers, dishwashers. If you have a refrigerator built after 2005, you're pretty good. If you have the refrigerator in your garage from 1977, you're not too good. So efficiency is one of these things where people are like, I want my house to be more efficient. Okay, well then get rid of 4 refrigerators. Like, I don't want to do that. Get rid of the hot tub. I don't want to do that. So we got to figure out how to balance practical use and needs with comfort and convenience. So I recommend to people, if your refrigerator is older and you don't really want to buy a new one, look for one built after 2005 on Facebook or Craigslist and buy a used one. Just so you know, ice makers use a lot more power than the refrigerator. Because freezing ice takes a lot of energy, keeping things cold, not as much energy. So insulation, most people think about efficiency and insulation. It needs to be against an air barrier. So if you're going to insulate your attic, you put down all this insulation, but you have air leaks at your can lights and your access hatch and your bathroom fan, you're losing air, which is the convection loss, which is the fastest loss of energy in the house, through the insulation. So your attic insulation works, but doesn't work as well as if it was against an airtight surface. Styrofoam sheets I find to be super handy for making repairs. So if I have a wall with insulation that's exposed, I can put a sheet on it, make it airtight, and that adds insulation as well as an air barrier. Insulation is most effective when enclosed. So if anyone has bonus rooms above their garage, you'll know that that room is always hot. There's several reasons for that, but one is if you go in the attic and look at the wall, you'll see the insulation. If you were to cover that insulation and encapsulate it, it would work a lot better, but then you have to worry about moisture. So you'll get a perforated insulation to improve that. There's other things about bonus rooms we're not going to go into, but there is a law of diminishing returns with insulation. So if I see an attic with absolutely no insulation, you can see the drywall. They are a huge, they stand to gain the most. So if they add 8 inches of insulation, they save $1,000 a year on their heating bill. If they have 8 inches of insulation, then they add 8 more, you save more like $75 a year. And if you go above that, you save like $12, $13, $14 a year. So going from 0 to some, huge gains, some to more, smaller gains, more to most, not really cost effective. Still recommend it in easy to access areas. So crawl space and attic usually could use more insulation. No, that's not true. Crawl spaces could usually use more insulation. Attics are usually pretty well insulated. So again, if you have anything over 10 inches, you can add more, but don't expect to see big results. So crawl space insulation, here we have pretty typical. This is a R19 6-inch floor insulation. This is the floor above. If you look back here, you can see daylight through the foundation vent. So the cold air comes outside in through the foundation vent and is between the floor and the insulation. That insulation is pretty much worthless. Close the vent, that insulation becomes much better. There are two schools of thought: push the insulation against the floor, makes the insulation work even that much better, or fully fill the space to get as much insulation as you can. When I see this, I go to this. Crawl space wall insulation. So you can insulate your floor or you can insulate the perimeter of the wall. Is there more square footage of floor or is there more square footage of wall? You're right. Usually like 2,000 square feet of floor, it might be 400 square feet of wall. So if your insulation is sold by the square foot, which it is, there's a lot less money to insulate your wall than to do your floor, as long as it's airtight. So when we see crawl space walls that are not insulated, that have leaky vents, things like that, you're cutting styrofoam blocks and placing them against the rim joist. You're covering over the vents. You're insulating your wall. If you have that example where the insulation was below the floor, Building Science Institute said this is the best way to go, with a piece of styrofoam along the bottom of the joists. However, in the used home market, it's hard to do that because there's a lot of pipes and ducts and wires and all kinds of things. This will provide protection to both the floor and the joist, where this floor joist will conduct more cold through it when there's not a sheet of foam. So insulation is one of those things, if I look at a wall with a thermal camera, I will see the studs because they're better conductors of energy than insulation. So that being said, your floors are insulated, but they feel cold because your joists are radiating cold. So the purpose of the vents on a foundation are to ventilate moisture out. Okay. The vents let air in, that air rises through the house. So your crawl space is ventilating through the house, through the attic, which can cause mold problems if there's that situation or scenario of events. So creating a suction in the crawl space with the fan, closing off the vents and sealing them airtight, means that your crawl space is under negative pressure. If we open something in the house, it's going to suck air from the house through the crawl space and blow it out. So rather than letting an uncontrolled volume of unknown temperature, outdoor unknown humidity air, we're saying, no, we want to draw 50 cubic feet of 78 degree or 68 degree room temperature air at a house humidity through the space to ventilate moisture out. So rather than cold air coming on your floor, room temperature air is going under your floor and the floor feels warmer. And we know from earlier that if I can improve the temperature of my floor by like 3 degrees, I can turn my thermostat down by maybe 1 or 2 degrees. It's pretty simple to process. So
are they building new homes with that?
absolutely, yeah.
So this is the conditioned crawl theory.
Condition crawl, it's going to be called encapsulated crawl space. Condition crawl is a few steps further. So every crawl space should be looked at. Is it dry? Yes, it is. You probably don't have a moisture problem to be too concerned about. You can get away with less. If you have moisture coming up, then it's taping seams of the vapor barriers going up the walls and keeping an eye on it, maybe moisture meters, things like that. But we're semi-arid climate. So if you have a moisture problem in your crawl space, it's most likely your irrigation system. If not, then it's high water table. Attic ventilation. So we talked about ventilating moisture out of a crawl space. Attics are the same, but the purpose of attic insulation and ventilation is to keep the roof cold. So in the wintertime, you want your house insulated so that your roof stays cold. It doesn't melt faster than the eaves. So if we ventilate our attics correctly, when the roof gets warm enough to melt, it's because everything outside is also melting and you're going to shed the water off of your roof. If your attic does not have proper ventilation, it's going to melt faster. The water runs down the roof until it gets to the eave where it freezes because it's not insulated, and then you get an ice dam. We're in Idaho again. We don't really worry too much about ice dams, but they do occur occasionally. So keeping your roof ventilated, oh, sorry, underventilated will increase your air conditioning expenses. More importantly is it's cooking your shingles. So when a shingle degrades, it's a chemical reaction. And the hotter it is, the faster the reaction happens. So I see roofs that are 10 years old that are 25 years old because they got so hot. So it's not uncommon in the Treasure Valley for roofs to be underventilated. If you're ventilating a lot of air through the attic and you do have some sort of moisture problem, moisture is going to probably ventilate out of the properly ventilated attic. So most mold problems are two-part. Too much moisture from a shower head. If you have black stuff on your ceilings, mildew, whatever you want to call it, it's probably your shower head. So there was two ways to make shower heads more efficient. One was to create a spray of like needle-like jets. That loses a lot of heat. It does conserve water, but it turns a lot of that water into a vapor. So we have a lot more water coming out of a needly shower head than one that's more of a full force or micro droplets. So if you ever shop for shower heads, if you have rentals, I switch out shower heads first because I don't want moldy bathrooms in a month or a year.
So what's the right kind to get?
They will emit droplets.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say a droplet head. If you get an energy audit, it includes a shower head.
That's the free stuff.
Yeah, free stuff.
So the $10 shower head at Home Depot, is that the droplet one?
You would, I haven't shopped for shower heads in years.
$12 now.
Yeah, essentially, I find the pull down ones are usually the worst ones because they do have like 80 jets of water going everywhere. If you have a strobe light, you can strobe the shower and you'll see either drops or streams. Everyone should have one, right? The second biggest mold problem is due to a bathroom fan. So you have a fan in the ceiling and the duct isn't there and it's just blowing the moisture in your attic. So every time you shower, you're pumping moisture into the attic. That's going to cause mold. Connect the fan through the roof. All right, time for a trick question. Is wet air heavier or lighter than dry air?
Heavier.
Right, trick question. It's lighter, right? If it's heavier, the clouds will be falling on top of us. So moisture rises like the clouds. That's why ceilings get moldy, not the floor. That's why mold is in attics, not lower levels, because moisture doesn't have nitrogen. It's H2O. Air has nitrogen, makes it heavier than water. So the water will displace the nitrogen. So here did a home inspection just yesterday. This guy has a bunch of soffit vents. If you look here, you can see how much of the plywood has been cut out of the vent. And then if you look here, so this vent, 8 by 16, 128 square inches of metal. Of that, maybe 100 square inches is what they call net free ventilation, how much air can pass through. So 100 square inches goes down to like 10 square inches when you get to this insulation baffle. So that thing is designed to provide a chamber of air past the insulation to this. I'm looking at this house. He had 2 vents that were over a patio that were black. They've been just sucking air in like crazy. All his other vents are undercut and baffled with insulation, and his shingles are failing. His house is 12 years old. So that's the typical baffle that most insulation contractors here install. This is a bigger one, 3.5 inches, 23.5 inches wide. So that is a full air chamber that would replace that kind of baffle. I recommend if you're going to get into this, you pull that piece down, you cut the opening, and you work from the outside. Push some insulation down so you can see that, slide that in. Improvements. Cut the vents bigger with your Sawzall, put in a baffle. Whether or not you install a solar attic fan is completely up to you. With passive vents, you should have enough ventilation. You don't need a fan, but it does help sometimes, like in bonus rooms, to help dump heat out.
Sorry, you're saying that if you have a bigger vent area, that's not going to suck as much air in because the pressure change, right?
No, the bigger the vent, repeat the question. Want to repeat the question?
Oh, I was just, yeah, sorry, I was just curious. It sounded like what you said was they were narrow vent holes behind that mesh grate.
Correct.
Put a bigger one in there, and you're not gonna suck as much area. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying this will let more air pass more freely than that.
Got it. So you want more area.
You want more air. You want to ventilate your attic,
Cool down the attic, save shingles, put a new roof on.
right? Decrease moisture problems.
But
Decrease
it's, I
cooling
see what
costs.
you're saying, because at the beginning, we're talking about reducing
Yeah. Just
cold air getting in, and now.
Attics are different. We're trying to keep the roof cold is the purpose of that. So you can add R50 insulation to that attic. You won't really feel a heat or cold through it, but you're still trying to keep the roof cool. If you have R38 insulation, you don't get a lot of energy transfer through R38, but you're still got a hot roof.
So choke everything down at the bottom with a fan, preferably, and then open the holes on top, let circulation in the house.
No, you do not choke down holes on the bottom. You open up holes, open up soffits, open up holes, create as much, open all the windows, let the air flow freely.
But we close the can light holes.
Cock everything.
We don't want to lose air from inside of the house to the attic, but we do want to take outside air through the attic and put it back outside. So soffit vents are letting air from outside into the soffit, through the baffle, and up through a roof vent. If we restrict airflow here, we lose airflow there.
Right,
And-
but what I think he's getting at though is the foundation vents, right? 'Cause you're saying close off all the foundation vents in the bottom.
Put in a fan to create a suction, cut a hole in your floor so that you're pulling air from the house through the floor out of your crawl space.
Mhm.
So two approaches.
Yeah.
And that cut the hole through the floor with the fan thing is dependent on each house. If your floors are insulated, insulator's gonna argue, air seal the floor and your insulation works. I tend to like to focus on the outside, keep the outside separate from the inside.
Well, and that's what you look at so you can, he'll tell you how you can get an energy audit if you want, and Idaho Power wants us to get these. And so they pay for a large part of it. And so then he can look at, I've had him, he looked
Yeah,
at my house
specifics.
individually, and so then you can get the individual practical to-dos. And I did, I took a garbage bag and filled it with, I had a bunch of kayak
Hey,
foam, and
yeah.
like, this spot right here is all messed up, just get a garbage bag. And so, and then later we ended up having the spray foam, the whole perimeter of our crawl
Nice.
space.
I can't wait to see
Crawl
it.
space walls.
Yeah, good job.
Mm.
Potentially the largest problem in your house is your duct system. So we're gonna look first at the attic system. If you buy a new house, a lot of systems are going in the attic. It is the dumbest place to put anything. So attic in the winter time is supposed to be cold. That's why we insulate it. That's why we ventilate it. We're keeping the attic cold. Let's put all of our heating equipment and heating ducts in the attic. And then let's put the thing that has the least amount of insulation up there, like the ducts. So insulation, ducts have R8 insulation. Your attic's gonna have R38 these days. If you have existing ductwork and you go in your attic and you see it, it's kind of like that. Yeah, you can insulate the attic, but more importantly, you're gonna put more insulation on top of your ducts to protect the ducts, which have the most energy rich in the air in the house. If you have a duct leak in your attic, rather than the air getting into the house, you're now heating your attic. If you have what the return side is under suction, if you have an attic leak on the return side, you're sucking attic air into your house, then heating or cooling with your furnace, and then putting it in the house. A leak on either side creates a pressure difference. So if the supply pushes pressure in the house and it's leaky, that means the return is sucking more air from the house and the supply is putting back, and now all your windows are leaking at the same time. Vice versa, if your supplies are leaking or your return's leaky, you're sucking in cold air, but you're pushing your heat out the windows instead. So leaky ducts are not your friend. This was a home inspection, I want to say 2016 house. That is her 12-inch return duct. Why is my energy bill so high? Because your duct is disconnected and it's in the attic. That's my $300 cooling bill. You're sucking 130-degree air and then air conditioning it in a open loop. So duct sealing is pretty simple. You get a bucket of mastic. You can smear it on with a paintbrush. You can put on some gloves, and you're basically just looking for any holes. If you do it while the system's running, you can feel it. You can do little corner holes like that. But primarily, I say focus on There's a trunk, the big trunk with the branches that come off. Seal the trunk and the branches at a minimum, as well as the vents through each floor. The penetrations we talked about at first.
So that silver tape isn't good to use?
It's good for a short while, but then you'll notice when you go to peel it off, it just falls off. If you are going to apply sealant, you pull the tape first, because if you put sealant over the tape and the tape falls off, the sealant fell off with it. So there is different grades of tape. Some will have a black sticky mastic built into it, but most tapes will eventually fail and fall off. Okay, how does the cost of heating a home affect efficiency? So we're going to leave that screen so you don't read too far ahead. Let's say you have electric resistance heat in your ceiling and your power bill is $400 a month. And you're going, do we want windows or a more efficient heating system? Let's do windows. Okay, so we replace all the windows and we save $40 a year. So we go from $400 times 12 is $4,800 minus 40, $4,760 a year to save that. And you're like, okay, well, Chris also said we should insulate the floor. Okay, you're insulating the floor. You're going to take that $4,800 bill and reduce it by 5%. We're going to make all these improvements that have pretty good return on making the house more efficient. But what if we replace the heating system that's the problem? So we're going to put in a high efficiency system. Our heating bill is now $1,200 a year. And all those savings that were 10% of 48 are now only 10% of 2,100 or whatever the number was. So when we increase the efficiency of the heating system, we're kind of decreasing the effectiveness of all these other improvements. So if you have electric heat, it's the worst kind of heat there is. It is basically a one-to-one. It's ridiculous, the industry. An electric heater is 100% efficient. Your hair dryer, your oven, your electric water heater, your baseboard heaters, your radiant heaters are 100% efficient because there is no chimney where you're losing heat out of a chimney. Okay, a furnace is 90% efficient, 10% goes out of the chimney. So if electric heat is 100% efficient, what is a high efficiency heat pump? Those are 350% efficient. Obviously, you can't do that. So they need to revise how they do their heating system. So this is my little example. I just want to explain to you so that you didn't have to read so much. So these are all examples of electrical heating systems. There's no baseboards, but essentially we'll say $3 to heat, 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 $1 to heat. So it's ductless mini split heat pump is way more efficient than electric heat. A central heat pump on an electric furnace is far more efficient than electrical heat under certain conditions. So if you're going to do a central heat pump, the first thing I would say, do you have gas in your neighborhood? Because you should really put in a gas furnace. Or you're running solar and you're like, we want to do solar, so therefore we want a heat pump. We want to drop the $25,000 and get a high efficiency heat pump. I don't want to do that. I want to get the $8,000 heat pump. Okay, that heat pump only works until it's about 32 degrees outside. Then it works okay until 28. Heat pump shuts off, electric resistance turns on, and you just spent $12,000 on a heating system that doesn't heat when it's cold out. Okay. Huh?
What's the answer?
Gas, if it's an option.
Okay.
Ductless mini systems.
Okay.
And then there are new ductless heat pumps that have ducts. So if you have a small 1,000 square foot home or something, Mitsubishi makes a line that has ductless heat pump, ductless air handler that connects to ducts, and you can then run to 3 or 4 rooms.
And is that what we should consider? Because some of us probably have older rentals that may have, I think that thing you said, which was horrible, which is like a ceiling heat.
Yeah.
Or we may have electric heat vents still. So we should be saving up for our ductless mini split systems for those.
Yes. I put a ductless system in my rentals and I charge my tenants $100 more in rent because their power bill dropped substantially. Next up will be a heat pump water heater. We'll get to that next up too. For now, we're going back to this. So air filters restrict airflow through your air handler. So when you turn on the furnace, you want to move air through the system as designed. If you want to really decrease your efficiency, you're going to have a dirty filter in there stopping air from moving. Your furnace is going to get hot. Doesn't have, so it's like a radiator in a car. If you drive the car, you pass air through it, it cools down. The furnace gets hot. It wants to move air through to heat the house. If it can't move air through, the furnace is getting hotter and hotter, sending more and more heat out of the chimney, damage equipment. Eventually it fails because it got too hot and cracks things. So the simplest thing you can do is change your air filter. A dirty air filter will greatly decrease your air conditioner's efficiency. An 8 MERV filter will let through a lot more than we'll say a 12 MERV filter. So if you go to the store and you're like, oh, I want pollen and mites and dust and nanotechnology, and then you want to filter out everything that could be in your house these days, you're going to go for like a 12 MERV. You don't want. So those are going to clog a lot faster, and they're restricting airflow from the get-go. If you have a 1-inch filter in a 4-inch space, put in a 4-inch filter and you'll get more surface area to filter and let air pass through. On those ductless mini splits, this is a great one. Idaho Power did a energy revamp on a house, got the house super efficient. 3 years later, like, Chris, something happened. This thing don't work anymore. They never changed their filter on their ductless systems. So they like pull it out, like, geez. And then the air came out, like, oh my gosh, that thing blows air. Yeah. I thought I had more than 15 minutes.
Oh, you can,
So,
no, you're fine. You're okay.
I measure airflow coming through vents. I measure the open hole. So the furnace turns on, air comes out of the vent, and I measure it. Okay, 70 cubic feet of air per minute. Let's put on this nice designer grill. Well, that cut airflow by, and if it was 80, we're down to 19. This one cut airflow by 19. This one cut it down by 19 plus 9, 28. The old tried and trusty one lets more air through. More importantly, when a furnace turns on, it has convection, it's moving air, and it's under pressure. So when the air comes out of a vent, you want to be able to stand back and feel it and be like, okay, it's mixing the air as it comes out. These do more of a billowing. So air comes out, but it never, if we're talking the floor, comes out of the vents and it kind of sits low on the floor and it travels through the door and it goes down the hallway until it finds a return and then it goes up. So if we are creating, we'll say, mushrooms of air around things, it's because it's not has enough velocity. That will restrict velocity because of the mishmash behind the grill. The grill itself is pretty flat. This will direct air, but most of that opening is covered with wood. Most of that is open and finned, so those are going to throw air way further and more of it than the other options. Nowadays, we put what's called a passive return grill above a door. So if you have an office or a room that gets hot, I'm like, well, close the door, still gets hot. As soon as you close the door, the vent is trying to push air into a closed system. It's not getting through the door and going to the return. So if we cut a hole above a door on both sides, we're going to let air return. And this made a huge difference in my house. So I had an office. Now I get like cooked out in the winter and froze out in the summer. So I'm actually like closing my vent off. Like this thing works too good. Because if you open a door, you're also letting cold spill out or heat spill out. So keeping a door closed is a good way to condition a room as long as you have a passive return grill. Water heating is probably, I think, the second biggest cost in a house next to heating and cooling. An electric water heater, it's 100% efficient. Heat pump water heater, 200% efficient. There is Idaho Power rebates available on electric water or heat pump water heater. I think it's $350. So Idaho Power gives you a check. It's $300 actually. I picked one up at Lowe's for $1,000. I'm going to install that in my split rental and charge both my tenants more for their hot water. And I'm just going to save $300 a year with that thing. So my situation is a little different because it's four occupants now, crawl space, yada, yada, yada. But that thing is going to pay for itself in 3 years and then continue to pay me year after year after year.
And what was that?
A heat pump water heater.
And it's $1,000?
I got mine for $1,000.
Oh.
Yeah, Lowe's. So I'm also the guy that's like, oh, ding in that refrigerator. $1,000 mine.
Oh, okay,
That was an open model, but I think they're 1,800.
okay.
If you're looking for one, when you see the good one, grab it, or the right one. So going from standard electric to a heat pump water heater saves about $250 a year. Going from standard electric to a gas water heater saves about $250 a year. So back to the basics, gas water heaters cost less to use than electric water heater. And then we get into on-demand. So an on-demand gas water heater is more efficient than having a 50-gallon tank of water, but not terribly so. However, that is floor space. So if you have a water heater in a closet taking up space, you can put this guy on a wall and now you have more floor space. And if solar or homes are sold by the square footage, you'll make more on the water heater by having more square footage. I just made that up, but it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Okay, in
Well,
summary.
maybe as houses get more expensive per square foot, people will be getting smaller spaces and therefore that closet will be more valuable to them.
And I look at all kinds of houses. So 3 water heaters, you could have 1 water heater. Water heater could go over, not legally, but you can put it above things if there's access. It opens up options that weren't there before. Yeah. So to be honest, we don't make energy efficiency improvements to make the house more efficient. Because you're going to spend a lot more money on that improvement than you're ever going to save on the efficiency. So if you do new windows, you're probably doing it because the paint's peeling, the sound transfer, inconveniences, locks don't work, whatever. We're replacing windows because we don't like something about the window other than the efficiency. Adding insulation. You've got insulation in the attic, and if it's less than 8 inches, you can add more, but you're not going to recoup your cost before you die, unless power bills go up. And that goes for a lot of things, like new washer and dryer, never going to pay for itself. New dishwasher, never going to pay for itself. LED light bulbs, they pay for themselves. Get them today. Ceiling ductwork, depending on how much you pay, will pay for itself. It's one of the fastest returns. So maybe an 8-year return on ceiling ductwork if your ducts are leaky. But if your ducts aren't leaky, you're wasting money on sealing them. Sealing air leaks. You run around the house with your spray foam. You did the foundation vents. I did the thing under the bathtub. I did the fart fans. All that's great. $11 a year. Okay, I don't want to save $11 and spend my weekend doing this. The key factor is recommended improvements prolong the life of the home and improve the comfort and quality of life while saving money on utility costs. So if you're marketing your rental, this house is efficient. Okay, great. You're going to spend less on your power bill. It's comfortable. It's quiet. It doesn't smell like crawl space. And if you really screw up, I know that I still am not going to have mold in my attic or crawl space because I took proactive measures to prevent these things. So every house is different. I'm making blanket statements here today. Like if you do this, that, this, I would say, get an energy audit through Idaho Power. They subsidize this. They pay like 2/3 of the cost. So if your house is all electric, it's $99. Looking at crawl spaces, attics, heating and cooling, windows, putting it all in a software system, saying, well, what are you thinking about? Well, I was thinking new windows. Let's put new windows. Okay, what if we do that? We can put that. And then it'll show you the savings. And then you can make an informed decision like, okay, that heat pump water heater makes sense. Mixing electric with gas makes sense. Doing some things don't make sense.
Do we have you do the inspection, or would you call Idaho Power?
You would sign up through Idaho Power and then name drop.
Perfect. I'm like thoroughly convinced we have the most inefficient place in this area right now.
I can prove you wrong, I bet, but
The link for the Idaho Power is on the agenda, and it was on the invitation already in your email. Because we just got a thing, and so I signed up for one for the vacation thing that we bought, but I didn't see a space to put your name, so I'll have to go
I
down
name
and-
dropped you too. I was
Oh,
like, Stacy be
reverse
writing you.
name dropped. Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. So yeah, and he did this at my house, and I got a bunch of free light bulbs, and he changed them for me at the energy audit. Do you always do that, or was that just because I'm a friend?
No, I do that.
So yeah, it's $99 plus free light bulbs that get changed. And he's there for a while and he does cool things with this big fan. And anyway,
Yeah.
I thought it was great. So
And so how does it work if you need more contracting work to come in and seal things off? Is that on our part?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I'm unbiased. If you get an energy audit through the heating company, guess what you're gonna buy?
Yeah,
The window company, guess what you're buying?
gotcha.
I don't sell anything. Idaho Power has a list of participating contractors that have gone through their training or are certified by Idaho Power to perform the repairs. If you are all electric, then you qualify for rebates if you use those contractors.
Gotcha. Okay.
But in today's market, who knows who's available, when they're available,
Yeah.
yada, yada.
well, let's do a summary and then take questions,
Okay.
shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. Great job, Christopher. All right, we're gonna do the summary of the thing. And then you can tell me what I missed, but I took notes.
Okay.
And here today, we had Chris Callor of Professional Inspection Services, and he talked to us about energy efficiency. And he gave us a pretty, I mean, straight talking view of what people do to make their homes more energy efficient and what they're really actually doing. And a lot of times the bottom line of the presentation was, why are we doing energy efficiency? Maybe we think it's to save money, but really we're doing it to be more comfortable, to have a mold-free home. We're gonna save a little bit of money and it's gonna be more quiet. There's a lot of things that come with it. But if you're only going for cost savings, there's very few energy efficiency tips that really give you the biggest bang for your buck.
Well, that's half true, because I will give you the tips all day long. This is what you should do. And you could probably do that in an hour or two, but how many people are gonna do the things that I tell them to do? Not many, because they wanted new windows. That's why I was there.
Mhm. So if you want new windows, ask your window guy if the windows are leaking and they will say yes. And if you want a new furnace, ask the furnace guy if your furnace is efficient and he will say no. If you really wish you had an on-demand hot water heater, better be gas because that's the most efficient one. Call the water heater guy and that's what he will sell you. But if you really want to know what specifically you can do to improve your home, one thing you could do is sign up with Idaho Power. Ask for an energy audit. They'll pay for 2/3 of it. You can pay $100 and get free light bulbs that Chris changes. But
And you go on rentals.
Otherwise-
It's not just home or occupied, it's rentals as well.
they'll do it for rentals. Okay.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the windows save a lot of money. No, they save
It
some
costs
for
a
the-
lot of money.
they cost a lot of money, but the cellular blinds are one great way to get the improvement out of your windows for a lot less than having to change your
I forgot
windows.
one important part of that. The most efficient thing you can do with your window is to remove it and put in a wall with insulation.
Practical tips and not so practical tips. Bulbs, light bulbs are the most cost-effective thing that you can do to increase your efficiency because they're cheap.
Let's say one of the most cost-effective things.
Clarification noted. Air leakage into the home, big deal. And sometimes you need to prevent it from happening, but other times you need to make sure that that attic is letting air in and letting it back out the other side, that you're not doing something bad. And cooking your roof shingles.
Yes.
And moisture is oftentimes found in the houses that we're selling. When we're doing inspections, it's almost 50%, folks, that I'll get mold. So when you go to sell your house, budget as a seller, plan to have to fix the mold or get the special shower head that doesn't let as much of it happen, and maybe a forced fan in there. Conditioned crawl spaces and blowing air out of your crawl space is a great way to keep that air flowing and to prevent that mold. And your heat is one of your biggest costs. So look at what you're heating. If you're ever buying a new furnace or something like that, pay attention to the efficiency and what your options are. Ductless mini split is a good thing to consider. Your water heater costs a lot of money in an energy, and your old appliances. If you're cheaping out and getting them on Craigslist, like maybe we do, just make sure it's 2005 or newer, or else you're going the wrong way with your efficiency.
Well done.
Is that it? Did we cover it? Oh, no. But the number one thing that we really all do poorly, and you know who does it worse than us? All of our tenants. What do we need to do if we want to just not pay as much in our heating and cooling bill?
Change the filter.
Louder.
Change the filter.
Change the darn filter. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go home and do that now.
All right.
Good job, Callor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris Callor, Professional Inspection Services, AVID Investors.
Any questions?
You're great.
Okay, I got a question for you. What's the most drafty window out there?
The open one.
Exactly. I go to audits, I need new windows because they're drafty. I'm like, your window's open. Oh, that's just for the bedroom. I'm like, yeah, but that window's open and the whole house is connected to the window. Like, thanks, guys.